The day I turned 18, my world shifted in a way I never saw coming. I woke up to the usual birthday excitement. My mom had made pancakes with candles on top. My dad greeted me with a proud smile, and a pile of gifts waited in the living room. For a moment, everything felt normal, perfect, even. But that illusion shattered over breakfast. "Emily," my dad said, setting his coffee mug down. His tone was calm but purposeful, the kind of tone he used when delivering news I probably wouldn't like. "We need to talk." I glanced at Mom, who gave me a tight-lipped smile, the kind that didn't quite reach her eyes. My stomach dropped. "What's going on?" Dad folded his hands on the table. "Now that you're 18, your mom and I think it's time you start paying rent." Rent. That one word hit me like a punch to the gut. I laughed, hoping it was some kind of twisted joke. "What do you mean, rent? I live here. I've always lived here." "You're an adult now," Mom said gently. "It's important to learn how to manage your finances and take responsibility." Responsibility? My voice rose. "I'm still in high school. How am I supposed to afford that?" "You have a job," Dad said matter-of-factly. "You make more than enough to cover $600 a month." My mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "You're serious? You actually want me to pay to live here? I thought you were supposed to support me." "We are supporting you," Mom said, her voice steady but sad. "This is part of that support. You'll understand someday." I pushed my chair back, the scrape of wood against tile echoing in the room. "No, I won't. This is insane." I stormed upstairs, slamming my bedroom door so hard the frame rattled. The morning that started with candles and pancakes had turned into a nightmare. I sat on my bed, arms crossed, stewing in disbelief. How could they do this to me? Parents were supposed to help their kids, not charge them rent like some landlord. For the rest of the day, I avoided them. I didn't cut the cake they'd made or open the presents they'd wrapped. The thought of celebrating felt ridiculous when my entire world had just been upended. The next few weeks were a blur of arguments. I tried everything, begging, yelling, guilt-tripping, but my parents didn't budge. Every time I handed over that $600 at the beginning of the month, it felt like a betrayal. The resentment sat heavy in my chest, growing with each transaction. At first, I considered moving out. Some of my friends had talked about renting apartments together after graduation, and for a fleeting moment, it seemed like an escape. But when I ran the numbers, reality hit hard. Between my part-time job at the cafe and my school workload, moving out wasn't an option. I was stuck. Despite the tension, life carried on. I graduated high school and enrolled in community college to save money, commuting from home every day. The rent arrangement didn't change. Every month, I handed over that envelope, barely looking my parents in the eye. My friends didn't understand. "Your parents charge you rent? That's so messed up," said Sarah, my best friend, during one of our late-night study sessions. "My mom still buys me groceries, and I'm in college." "Yeah, well," I said, bitterness creeping into my voice. "My parents are apparently running some kind of life lesson boot camp." "It's not fair," she said. "You deserve better." I wanted to believe her, but deep down, part of me wondered if my parents were right. I hated admitting it, but learning to budget my money had made me more disciplined. Still, that didn't make it hurt any less. By the time I turned 20, I'd grown used to the arrangement, though the resentment hadn't completely faded. I kept my head down, worked hard, and started saving what little I could after rent and school expenses. The bitterness became a dull ache instead of a sharp stab, but it was always there, lurking in the background. My parents, to their credit, never nagged me about the payments or brought it up unless I did. They gave me space, perhaps sensing that any attempt to explain themselves would only make things worse. Occasionally, I caught my mom watching me with a mix of pride and sadness, but I didn't ask why. I wasn't ready for another conversation about responsibility. As the years went on, I began to see the value in managing my own finances, even if I still resented the way I'd been thrown into it. My friends often came to me for budgeting advice, marveling at how I managed to save for emergencies while juggling school and part-time work. But no matter how much I learned, part of me couldn't shake the feeling that my parents had chosen the wrong way to teach me. When I turned 24, things began to change. I'd finished community college, and was working full-time as a graphic designer. My career was just starting to take off, and for the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope for the future. The resentment I'd carried for so long started to fade. Not entirely, but enough that I could think about my parents without feeling the weight of betrayal. That year, during a quiet Sunday dinner, my dad brought up something that caught me off guard. "So," he said, cutting into his roast chicken, "have you thought about moving out?" I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. "Why? Do you want me to leave?" "Of course not," Mom said quickly. "We're just wondering if you feel ready. You've been working so hard, Emily. We're proud of you." Their words caught me off guard. For years, I'd seen them as the villains of my story, the ones who forced me into adulthood before I was ready. But in that moment, they didn't seem like villains. They seemed proud, supportive, even. "I've thought about it," I admitted, "but I'm still saving up. Moving out is expensive." Dad nodded thoughtfully. "It is. But you're doing great, kiddo. And when you're ready, we'll be here to help." It was the first time in years that I felt like we were on the same team. Maybe, just maybe, things were starting to change. But even then, I had no idea what they were planning, or how much it would change my life. A few months after that quiet Sunday dinner, my 25th birthday rolled around. It was a low-key celebration. Just me, my parents, and a small cake with 25 written in blue frosting. The air felt lighter between us, though the invisible wall of the past still lingered. I wasn't holding on to the bitterness as tightly anymore, but I hadn't fully let go either. After dinner, we sat in the living room, the remnants of cake on the coffee table. My mom disappeared into the hallway and returned with a small envelope. My heart sank a little. Was this another rent-related surprise? I thought we were past that. "What's this?" I asked cautiously. "Just open it," Dad said, leaning back in his chair, a slight smirk on his face. Mom was watching me intently, her hands folded neatly in her lap. I tore the envelope open, half expecting a bill or a lecture disguised as a letter. Instead, I found a piece of paper folded neatly in half. As I opened it, the first thing I saw was a number. A very large number. $70,000. What is this?" My voice trembled, my eyes darting between the paper and my parents. Mom's smile was soft, her eyes shimmering with emotion. "It's yours." I blinked, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. "Mine? What do you mean?" Dad leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Every dollar you've paid us in rent, we've been saving it and investing it. We wanted you to learn the value of responsibility, but we never intended to keep the money for ourselves. It was always meant for you." My heart pounded in my chest as the words sunk in. "You saved it? All of it?" Mom nodded. "And then some. We invested carefully, and it grew faster than we expected. We wanted to wait until you were ready to take the next step before giving it to you." I couldn't speak. For years, I'd carried this anger, this weight of resentment, convinced that my parents had chosen a cruel way to teach me a lesson. And now, here they were, handing me the fruits of my own labor and theirs. I don't know what to say," I stammered. My hands were shaking as I set the paper down on the coffee table. "Why didn't you tell me? Why let me hate you all these years?" Dad's face softened, his expression thoughtful. "Because the lesson wouldn't have stuck if you knew. You needed to feel the weight of responsibility, Emily. And you needed to learn how to manage your money without expecting a safety net. It wasn't easy for us either," Mom added quietly. "We saw how upset you were, and it broke our hearts. But we believed it was the right thing to do." Tears welled in my eyes, and I wiped them away quickly, embarrassed by my sudden outburst of emotion. "I don't know if I can ever thank you enough," I whispered. "You don't have to thank us," Dad said. "Just use it wisely. It's yours now." I stared at the paper again, the number staring back at me like a lifeline. $70,000. Enough for a down payment on a house, or to pay off my student loans, or to start a business. The possibilities felt endless and overwhelming. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. I met with financial advisors, researched the housing market, and spent countless hours daydreaming about what my future could look like. For the first time, I felt like I had real options, a chance to build something lasting. One Saturday afternoon, I sat in the kitchen with my parents, a stack of house listings spread out on the table. Most of them were small starter homes, nothing fancy, but practical. "What about this one?" Mom asked, pointing to a modest two-bedroom house with a sunny yellow exterior. "It's cute, and it's in a nice neighborhood." "It's nice," I admitted, though my heart wasn't in it. Something about the process felt surreal, like I wasn't quite ready to take such a big step. Dad must have noticed my hesitation. "What's holding you back, kiddo?" I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "I don't know. I mean, this is amazing, but it's also a lot. I'm scared I'll mess it up. What if I choose the wrong house? What if I can't handle the responsibility?" Mom reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Emily, you've been handling responsibility for years. You're more ready than you think. And if you mess up?" Dad added with a grin, "Well, that's part of the process. Nobody gets it perfect the first time. The important thing is that you're trying." Their words reassured me, but the fear still lingered. Buying a house felt so final. It was a commitment I wasn't sure I was ready to make, even with the money they'd given me. But I also knew I couldn't let that fear hold me back forever. A few weeks later, I found it. The house. It wasn't the most practical choice, slightly above my initial budget, with a quirky layout and an overgrown backyard. But something about it felt right. The moment I stepped inside, I knew it was home. I called my parents from the driveway, my voice trembling with excitement. "I found it," I said. "This is the one." "We'll be right there," Mom said without hesitation. When they arrived, I led them through the house, pointing out the little details that had won me over. The sunlit kitchen, the cozy living room, the creaky stairs that added character. By the time we reached the backyard, I could tell they understood. "It's perfect," Mom said, her smile radiant. "It's so you." Dad nodded, his hands in his pockets. "You did good, kiddo. Really good." For the first time, I felt a deep sense of pride, not just in the house, but in myself. I had worked for this, learned for this, and now I was standing at the threshold of a new chapter. My parents had given me the tools, but I had built the foundation. As we stood in the backyard, the late afternoon sun casting a warm glow over the overgrown grass, I turned to them and said, "Thank you for everything. I didn't see it before, but I do now. You weren't just teaching me about money. You were teaching me how to believe in myself." Mom's eyes filled with tears, and she pulled me into a hug. "We're so proud of you, Emily. Always. Even when I slammed doors and called you the worst parents in the world?" I asked with a laugh. Dad chuckled. "Especially then." We laughed together, the tension of the past melting away in the glow of the present. This wasn't just a house. It was a symbol of how far we'd all come. And I knew, in that moment, that the best was yet to come. The house became mine a month later. Signing the papers felt like crossing an invisible threshold into adulthood, one I'd tiptoed around for years but never fully embraced. My parents were with me at the closing, sitting quietly as I inked my name on form after form. When the final signature was done, my mom leaned over and squeezed my hand. "You did it," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I smiled, but the truth was, I was terrified. Owning a house was thrilling, sure, but it was also daunting. There was no landlord to call if the pipes burst or the roof leaked. This was all on me now. The weight of that responsibility settled heavily on my shoulders, but as I walked through the door of my house for the first time, I felt a flicker of something else, pride. My parents helped me move in over the weekend, carting box after box from my childhood home into the bungalow. The first night, we sat on the hardwood floor of the living room, eating pizza straight from the box because I hadn't unpacked the plates yet. The room was empty except for us, but it felt full of possibilities. "This house has good bones," Dad said, looking around. "You're gonna make it your own." I nodded, already imagining the paint colors I'd choose, the furniture I'd buy, the way the space would evolve over time. It wasn't perfect. There were scuffs on the floor, and the kitchen appliances were older than I was, but it was mine. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I'd earned something. The next few weeks were a blur of unpacking and adjusting. My parents visited often, bringing meals and helping me with small projects. My dad fixed a leaky faucet in the kitchen while my mom, taught me how to patch drywall in the hallway. They were careful not to take over, letting me make mistakes and figure things out for myself. One evening, as we sat on the porch sipping tea, I turned to my mom. "You know," I said, "for years, I thought you and Dad were trying to punish me by making me pay rent. I was so angry." She smiled gently, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the porch light. "We knew you would be, and we knew it would take time for you to understand why we did it." "I do now," I said quietly. "I don't know if I can ever fully repay you, but thank you for everything." Her hand found mine, and she squeezed it. "You don't owe us anything, Emily. Seeing you thrive is all the thanks we need." Owning a house came with its fair share of challenges. The first time the power went out during a storm, I panicked, fumbling in the dark to find the circuit breaker. When the water heater broke 2 months later, I nearly cried at the repair bill. But with every hurdle, I learned something new. My parents had given me the tools to handle these moments, and I was determined to prove to myself and to them that I could. I started hosting small gatherings, inviting friends over for dinner or movie nights. My best friend Sarah, who'd once criticized my parents' approach, marveled at how comfortable I seemed in my new role. "You've grown up so much," she said one night, raising a glass of wine in my direction. "I don't think I could have handled all this at 25. "Neither did I admitted with a laugh. "But I guess I had a head start." As time went on, I realized how much I'd come to appreciate the lessons my parents had taught me. The resentment I'd once carried felt distant now, a faint echo of a younger, angrier version of myself. I started calling my mom just to chat, something I hadn't done in years, and I'd text my dad pictures of small projects I'd completed around the house, a freshly painted wall, a new light fixture I'd installed. Their pride was palpable in every response. On the 1-year anniversary of buying the house, I invited my parents over for dinner. It was a simple meal, pasta, salad, and a bottle of wine, but it felt like a milestone. As we sat around the table, I raised my glass. "To Mom and Dad," I said, my voice steady but full of emotion. "For believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. For teaching me the value of hard work, even when I hated you for it. And for always being there, even when I didn't deserve it." They both looked at me, their eyes shining. "To you, Emily," Dad said, raising his own glass. "For proving us right." We clinked glasses, and for a moment, the room was filled with nothing but the quiet hum of gratitude. It wasn't just about the house or the money. They'd given me something far more valuable, the confidence to build a life on my own terms. As the evening wound down, I walked them to the door. My mom hugged me tightly, and my dad ruffled my hair like he used to when I was a kid. "We're proud of you, kiddo," he said. "More than you'll ever know." After they left, I stood in the doorway for a long time, staring out at the quiet street. My house, stood behind me, a testament to everything we'd been through as a family. It wasn't just a structure of wood and brick. It was a symbol of growth, of resilience, of love. I closed the door and turned off the porch light, a smile playing on my lips. My parents had taught me what it meant to stand on my own 2 feet, but they'd also shown me that I was never truly alone. And as I walked back into the warm glow of my living room, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them, one step at a time.